balikan natin itong natin, pinag-aralan natin. Philosophy of the Human Person gave us a brief overview of the world within and the world without. The world inside and the world outside. Matter and form. The visible and the invisible. The tangible and the intangible. Pero ang focus natin most often than not, especially sa fourth quarter, will be the intangible, the invisible world. We have taken the journey looking through the lens of the most brilliant minds in the history of philosophy, but not all of them. And although we were not able to grasp most of their philosophers' projects, kasi nga human person ang target natin. Now, among the many brilliant minds, I mentioned Descartes, I mentioned, of course, Thomas Aquinas, I mentioned most of the time Immanuel Kant. Among these brilliant minds, Socrates will always take the spotlight. He's my bias. He's my bias. Socrates takes on the spotlight. On this last day, we will end where we begin. Our starting point is Socrates, and we will end with Socrates. Because for me, he is undoubtedly the philosopher of philosophers. I call all philosophers after René Descartes as intellectual prostitutes. Those who disregarded the philosophy of old. I call them intellectual prostitutes. They were devoid of proper thinking, proper reasoning, and proper feeling. Yung totality and yung pagiging holistic ni Socrates. We began during the third quarter with the story of the cave. And as we approach the end of the cave, we are not yet outside of the cave, we see light. At least we see light. Now, before we come out of the cave, let us end with the end of Socrates. Let us go back to the cave where he was imprisoned and was about to die. So we will talk about the death and the immortality of philosophy. The death and the immortality of philosophy. Akala ng mga Athenians, when Socrates was condemned to die by drinking hemlock, a poison, akala nila panalo na sila. They thought they won already. But they don't know it was only the beginning. For Socrates knew that the Athenians cannot harm him. The Athenians cannot kill him. He knew that his death is not the end. The philosophy cannot be killed. Philosophy cannot be murdered. They cannot do that. Remember how Socrates defined the human person. He is a human person, therefore he defined himself as such. Mamaya tatanungin ko sa inyo how Socrates defined the human person, if you can still remember. Now, before drinking the cup of hemlock, bago siya malason, pag nababasa ko yung kwentong ito sa Yusuf Row, naalala ko si Jose Rizal when he was about to be executed in Bagong Bayan. Relaxed kasi yung vital signs ni Jose Rizal ay relaxed eh. He's very chill lang, chill. The same thing with Socrates. He was very relaxed. Ang mga humahagulgol na at mga mataas na ang alta presyon ay yung mga kasama niya doon, yung mga kaibigan niya, at syempre yung asawa niya. And then one of his friends, Creton, asked him, Socrates, what can we do to please you? At least for the last time, what can we do to please you? Socrates answered, as I always tell you, Creton, take care of yourselves. Kala nyo yan yung usual cliche na take care of yourselves. Sabi niya kay Creton, as I always tell you, take care of yourselves. Si Socrates ang nagsabi, ibig sabihin hindi yan yung usual na take care of yourselves na nagbo-border na sa empty words sinasabi natin kapag tayo ay magde-depart na sa ating mga kasama. What does take care of yourselves mean? Remember how Socrates defined the human person. Pakilagay nga sa chat box. What is the definition of Socrates of the human person? I hope naalala pa. I hope lang, pero I doubt. Kasi yung lesson last week, malamang niya nakalimutan nyo na. Ang tinatanong ko, lesson from the third quarter. If for Plato, the human person is the combination of the body and the soul, for Socrates, it's different. How did Socrates define the human person? Kindly type in the chat box. Sir, may extra point, makakasagot. Yung unang makakasagot. How did he define the human person? O yung iba nag-open ng bright space, ayan na, lesson 1, lesson 1, lesson 2. How did Socrates define the human person? Para makita natin yung konteksto na ibig sabihin dito na take care of yourselves. Kahit one word lang, I'll accept it. Soul. Thank you, Christian. May plus point ka. May plus points. Plus point. One lang pala, no? May plus points ka, Christian. The human person is a soul. That's the definition of Socrates of the human person. Soul. Therefore, when Socrates says, take care of yourselves, he means take care of your soul. Take care of your soul. Now, how can you take care of your soul? Socrates will give us the same answer as this. An unexamined life is not worth living. An unexamined life is not worth living. A life devoid of philosophizing is not worth living. To take care of yourself, to have an examined life, is to be oriented towards the goal of philosophy. The goal of philosophy is truth. To take care of your soul is to face the sun of truth no matter how painful it is. We are not vampires. A life worth living is a life of following the truth wherever it leads you, no matter where it is. That's my motto. I am where I am today. I believe what I believe today simply because I follow the truth wherever it leads me. To take care of your soul means to live excellently and not to live a mediocre and average life. Because an excellent life, an excellent living is an examined life, is a life of philosophizing. This is how you take care of your soul. Now, the message of Socrates, take care of yourselves, is also the same message I am leaving you as we end this course of philosophy in the human person. The importance of the soul. We are capable of knowing, because of that soul, we are capable of knowing if we lived our life worthwhile or not. We're not the same as other animals. We're not the same as them. This soul that lies in us does not only give us life, but also our freedom, our capability to go beyond the limitations set by matter. The soul enables us to feel, to see, and to touch the reality of other people. They're being fellow subjects. It's on the soul level, it's not in the matter level. Since seeing them as fellow subjects, we reach their hearts so we can feel what they feel, empathy. This is the summary of the lessons we talked about. And because of this, philosophy thrives. Philosophy lives on. Even in the most unfriendly and unfavorable environment like ours today. Now, I wish for you not to be mere wise men like the sophists, but seekers and lovers of wisdom. Seekers and lovers of wisdom. Seekers and lovers of wisdom. The mouth of Socrates will now be shut. But whether you like it or not, if you listened well, I hope you listened well, the voice will continue to penetrate your very being forever. May the voice of Socrates always hunt you and make you do necessary actions and resolutions. For hear me, your grades is not the determinant of your if you really learn philosophy. It's just external. Yes, it might tell me something, but it's not the main determinant of your of your learning, of your education in philosophy. The true manifestation or evidence of learning is behavior change. No more, no less. Behavior change. Anong klaseng behavior change? That's a matter of ano lang, question. That's a matter of principle. But there must be behavior change in terms of thinking, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of creative thinking, in terms of reflecting. Kahit man lang kung dati padalos-dalos ka, ngayon hindi na kasi nag-iisip ka na ngayon. That must be the very change that should have transpired. Although it cannot be learned ng ganun kabilis, kailangan mo talagang upuan yun. You need practice. But at least philosophy gave you the starting point. Behavior change. I hope yun ang mangyari after this course. And part of behavior change is also learning to ask questions. May iniisip. Sir, may iniisip. Ano yun, Naila? Clarifications. Philosophy, you know why? It can be learned, but it's very difficult to learn philosophy. Kasi you need time. In this world na meron tayo ngayon na very fast-paced lahat, wala ka ng time upuan pa ito. Remember, ang sabi ko sa inyo dati, di ba, pag nag-aaral ng mga philosophers, they don't just read books. They sit with the masters. They speak with the masters. They ask questions to the masters. In a way, they learn. And it takes time. It takes effort. Kung nagmamadali tayo palagi, you cannot really learn philosophy. You cannot really learn it. It can be learned, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult. You need time. Kahit nga mga nag-aral ng philosophy for 4 years, for example, ang mga philosophy major, ano, pagka lumabas na sila dun sa study nila ng philosophy, may doubt ka pa din. To talaga ba natuto sila? Talaga ba natuto sila talaga? Ba hindi, kasi it didn't manifest. Walang behavior change. Any other questions? Yes, philosophy is a lifelong learning because it is a lifelong search for truth. It's a lifelong search for that. It should not end. Remember, when you find the answer, it's no longer philosophy. Philosophy is more concerned with questions rather than answers. If you find the answer, it's no longer philosophy. Naila.
Sir, may question po ako. Kasi 'di ba po we are studying philosophy, these philosophers rin po yung mga philosophy nila and principles. Iniisip ko lang po, is it somehow yung mga sinasabi nila is just a theory? Kasi at some point may mga, it cannot be kumbaga hindi natin maiwasan na mag-ask na why are we even learning them when they are dead, when they are already dead, gano'n. May mga naririnig rin po akong gano'n or somehow napapaisip rin ako, bakit nga ba 'no? Gano'n po, sir.
Number one, they paved the way. Yung kanilang mga sinasabi, it's not just simply theories. Those are observations. Those are observations. It is what they experienced during their time. Based on their assumptions and based on their articulation of certain realities that they have observed. Yun yung lumalabas sa kanilang mga sinasabi. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo sa philosophy, they rarely use the word theory. Those are not theories. Theories, more exclusive siya sa discipline of science, but in philosophy, they are not. Because philosophy, since it is a way of life, it is the incorporation of that philosophy, of that thought, to the reality of what the philosopher is living, the reality of the environment of the philosopher, the reality of the zeitgeist, the time spirit that guides the era of the philosopher. So, for example, when we talk about Karl Marx, how come he came up with that kind of principles or that kind of ideology? Simply because nakita niya There is this abuse in the part of the bourgeoisie, no? Sa mga proletariat. So that's what he wrote down. It's the time spirit. So in principle, it is not just simply theory. Maaring yung mga nakapaloob doon may mga theories, may mga pero yung kanilang principle is not. It's part of their life. It becomes the way of life during their time because it's where the spirit is bringing that generation, the thinking of that generation. Any other questions? Yes, Renzo.
Sir, napansin ko lang po kasi like, 'di ba po, different philosophers have different approach sa bagay-bagay po, sir. For example, about death. Ibig sabihin po nun, like, wala pong absolute truth sa bawat sinasabi ng philosopher. Like, we just have to, relay sa mga sinasabi nila. So, paano mo malalaman, sir, like, kung ano yung, um, paano, like, paano mo malalaman, sir, yung, uh, totoo in a way. I know, sir, like, philosophy is always finding for truth. Pero yung sa sarili mo, sir, like, paano mo malalaman kung ano yung paniniwalaan mo doon?
Number one, always take into consideration that not all philosophers is speaking about absolute truth. That's one. Number two, we need to go back to the traditional definition of truth, for example, or the very definition of it, the consonance of the thought and the reality. If we are going to go beyond that, some philosophers will tell us it cannot be, but they will tell us we are closer to that reality or that truth. No? Meron dapat congruence. Number one, logical. If it's not logical, not all philosophers are logical, by the way. Some of them are not. You can also notice that in the philosophy of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Na later on, i-articulate ni Thomas Aquinas. Later on, i-articulate ni René Descartes. But it doesn't mean hindi nila nakita yung totoo. No? It only means na kulang pa, for example, pwedeng ganun kulang pa yung mga na-discover or naisip nila na itong mga sumunod na ito yung inaayos nila. Sabi ko, they paved the way. They paved the way to the realization, to the attainment of truth. They paved the way. Kapag dapat andun ba, pasok ka doon, dapat logical yung sinasabi nila. Kapag hindi, doon papasok yung questions Teka, may inconsistencies. Let me ask the question. Then you are now led to the truth. The very act of searching for the truth is the very manifestation that there is absolute truth. The very fact that we are always in search for the best possible answer, for the absolute truth, means that there is. So these philosophers, that's their project. Whether they like it or not, whether they deny the absolute truth or they only believe on the relative truth, they are still in search. Kaya in philosophy, it's not really what they say that matters. It is the principle and the methods that they are teaching. Bakit ang hiniram natin madalas kay Socrates ay yung Socratic method? Because it's effective. The question and answer technique or the question and answer method. Bakit pagdating sa mga later philosophers, pagdating sa phenomenology, for example, hermeneutics and phenomenology will merge as a method? Kasi methods. There are methods in abstracting, not just simply criticizing the assumptions of the philosophers, but also yung mga answers sa realities that we are experiencing right now, we can use still their methods. And lastly, siguro babang mathematics din siguro yan. Iyamin ko yung mathematics Maybe they are trying to solve the same problem with a different method. Not all of them reach the final answer. Some of them are closer to the final answer. But not all of them, again, reach the final answer. Sabi ko yan kasi most of the philosophers na medyo modern philosophers ay mga mathematician. The same assumptions din ang sinasabi nila. For example, si René Descartes is a mathematician. Blaise Pascal is a mathematician. Sino pa? Si Ludwig Wittgenstein is also a mathematician. Bertrand Russell is also a mathematician. Those are their assumptions as well. Any other questions? O, di ba lumalabas ang questions? But the method, the voice of philosophy, the voice of Socrates, it will make that search alive. And once that searching is alive in you, you are living a worthwhile life. You are not simply passing. You are not simply existing. You are living. Ilan lang tao gumagawa niyan. Not all of us can do that. Sabi nga nila, no, yung mundo natin ngayon, part naman siguro ng tanong kanina, yung mundong ginagalaw natin ngayon, nakafocus tayo masyado sa work. Nakafocus tayo masyado sa output. Diba? Sa study natin, for example, sa schooling ninyo, aminin natin yan, we are too focused on the output. Do you agree?
Yes po, sir.
Diba?
Yes,
May
sir.
expected na po
That's
kaming
the
out.
reality. Diba? May creative output na ako pinapasubmit eh, diba? Hindi lang naman ako nag-iisa nagpasubmit. Lahat kami. We are too concerned with the output. We forgot to think. Nalimutan natin mag-philosophize. Ganon din sa totoong buhay. We are so concerned with the realities of our lives. The problems ng mga, ayun, hindi nyo pa, ang naranasan nyo lang ngayon, mga pag-aaral, yan, konting family problems. Pero pag may sarili na kayong family, for example, tapos kayo nagkatrabaho na kayo, you are paying the bills, malilimutan nyo na lahat yan. Philosophy. Ay, kailangan ko kumita ng pera. That's not living a life worth living. Because that's an unexamined life. But we cannot simply judge the person because that person is already faced with the realities of life. Nire-remind lang tayo lagi ng philosophy, balik tayo. Kasi walang mangyayari kung ganun, dumaan lang talaga tayo. Para tayong mga animals, naganap lang ng pagkain. O yun, tapos. It will not. I don't think philosophy will die. As long as there are questions, philosophy will live. And as long as there are people willing to ask difficult questions, and as long people are willing to think, philosophy will not die. Excuse me. Ayan. Any other questions? Baka may maisip pa kayo.
Sir, may question ako. Kasi 'di ba sabi niya, philosophy will ayun nga po, philosophy will not die, pero at some point na-mention niyo rin na in this generation parang may death in terms of philosophy, but not literally death. Parang
Yes.
it's just that we don't tend to see philosophy anymore. But somehow in our lives, we we integrate it pero hindi na natin nare-realize because it's somehow like yung word na yon is neglected by the the mass po. Kumbaga, it's more on the reality and the action, but the realization of what we're doing as part of philosophy is hindi na nare-recognize.
You
Yun
know
ang
why?
ayun. Why po, sir?
Do you know why? Because we are allergic to questions. If you ask questions, you will be belittled. You will be invalidated. You will be tagged as illiterate. You will be tagged as stupid. So nobody wants to ask questions anymore, especially the difficult questions. People will laugh at you. That's the reality of our time. No? Kaya usually nagkatanong, kaya nga 'di ba sasabi natin, ito pa lang sa mga bahay pa lang natin, this is very practical. Philosophers, natural philosophers, mga bata. Siguro sa inyo ng mga bata pa kayo, may mga ganito sa inyo. Wala kang ginawa sa parents ninyo kundi tanungin sila. Wala kang ginawa sa bahay ninyo ng mga bata kayo kundi magtanong. The response of the parents, the response of the guardians are very important in developing philosophers, in developing critical thinkers. Because if you dismiss immediately the child will no longer grow to fund ask to be fund in asking questions. Masasyan siya. Magsa-shut up na lang siya. He will no longer ask. It's bad to ask questions. And then pagpunta niya ng school, magtatanong siya ulit, the teacher will shun the student and will tell them not to question anything. And when you do that, we are creating a culture that is paving the way sa kung ano man yung resulta na nararanasan natin, for example ngayon. Nobody wants to ask. Okay, hayaan na lang, sige na, huwag na tayo magtanong. Pag nagtanong tayo, papahiya tayo. In a way, that is a figure of the death of philosophy. Diba may iilan pa rin na matatapang that they will continue to ask the most difficult questions and to search for the answer. Even that's my training even in the seminary, ano. Akala nila pagka ang pinag-uusapan ay religion and belief and faith, you can no longer ask. You can ask questions. Because in a way, that is deepening. More so in philosophy, it's deepening. Although not all questions can be answered, but for me, the importance there is the quality of the question. At the same time, your willingness to search the answer together. Because some answers really is very difficult. Some questions really are very difficult to answer. You really need to think, to stop everything that you're doing and to think. Now, we cannot blame the people if our election turned out this way. Kasi yun yung environment. They are not taught to think, to pause, to reflect. Kaya ang sabi ko nung pag nag-uusap mo sa seminaryo noon, philosophy should be taught even in elementary. Not just in senior high school or in college. When I was outside the seminary, nung nag-aaral ako ng nursing, ang philosophy ko lang dalawa. Philosophy of man, na ngayon ay philosophy of the human person, and then logic. Yun ay ethics, yung pangatlo ethics. Pero college na ako noon. I never heard of those Socrates ko nadidinig. Si Aristotle lang nadidinig ko sa science because he's the father of biology, period. Rene Descartes, pag pinag-aralan na sa high school yung Cartesian plane, that's him. Pero yung philosophy nila, I never heard it until I entered the seminary. Kaya sabi ko, bakit? Kahit yung methods man lang ituro sa mga bata, yung pinaka-safe na method will be the Socratic method. So that we can develop critical thinkers. Hindi basta-basta kasi na-develop yung kailangan mag-umpisa yun sa pagkabata. Sa mga bahay natin, kung may mga kapatid kayo at mga pamangkin na makukulit and they are asking questions, wag niyo silang i-shun, wag niyo silang sabihin na shut up. Entertain their questions. If you cannot answer, you show them your willingness. If you don't know the answer, you show them the willingness that you want to find the answer with him or her. In a way, we are developing children at that point. All right, any other questions? Meron pa? I hope you have learned something for a semester. Kahit konti, no? Hindi man lahat. And I sabi ko nga, ulit ko, to final sermon na. Learning is a personal affair. Meaning, you are responsible for what you will learn and what you will reject. You are responsible whether you want to study or not. Because it's a personal affair. It's between you and yourself. And then definitely it will radiate afterwards. But primarily, learning is a personal affair. It's your responsibility. And whatever is lacking in my presentation of the philosophy of the human person, please supplement, read, study, apply what you can apply. With that, I think magiging successful yung philosophizing ninyo, yung reflection ninyo. Alam nyo ba, na ito lang, last na talaga to, hindi ko na mapigilan eh. Sabihin ko lang. Yung ibang mga philosophers dito, Yung mga philosophers na Rene Descartes, for example, hindi man nila talaga alam na philosopher sila sa umpisa. They are just reflecting. If you will read the Meditations on First Philosophy by Rene Descartes, parang nagsusulat siya sa diary niya. I am seated in a couch in front of a fireplace and a thought came into my mind. Mga ganun. So if you are going to reflect and if you are going to write sa diary ninyo yung mga thoughts ninyo, at pagkamatay ninyo, ma-discover yan, malay nyo. No? Philosopher na din kayo, hindi nyo alam. No? Kaya nga ako tinatabi ko yung mga journal ko, yung mga diary ko, yung mga thoughts ko. Malay ko, di ba, pag namatay ako, maging philosopher din ako na totoo, na kagaya nila Rene Descartes. But again, that's very helpful in containing your thoughts also. At pwede nyo siyang balikan. You write your journal. May hinanakit ka, may nakikita kang mali, isulat mo doon. And then you articulate it unti-unti. It's the beginning. Kasi whatever you wrote down, tumatatak yan sa inyo. Instead of simply keeping your thoughts in passing, mawawala yan. That's not permanent. Maalala mo na lang ulit yan pag may nag-stimulate, no? But if you wrote it down, pwede mong balikan. And then you will see your growth eventually. And then makita mo na, ay, ganito pala yung flow of thoughts ko. Ano yung mali dito? Itama nga natin. That's philosophizing. Alright? So, yun ang aking mga last tips na lang. You keep your journal with you. Okay, hindi pa